My governor covered up criminal acts by a campaign donor named Kent Jernander, but Fox News still lets him talk about corruption and hypocrisy.
Joining us now, two rising stars in the GOP, Governor Tim Pawlenty of Minnesota and Michael Steele, former lieutenant governor of Maryland, who's now running to be chairman of the Republican National Committee. And gentlemen, welcome.
Hey, Chris. Hey, Chris.
Governor Pawlenty, now that you've had almost 2 weeks to crunch the numbers and to think about it, what do you think are the larger lessons about the Republican loss on Election Day?
Well, two things. One is Republicans lost their way. You can't be a party of fiscal discipline and have all these bailouts, have profligate spending in Washington, have corruption, and have the hypocrisy between what our party stands for and the actions, particularly in Washington, D.C. And then number two, Chris, though, we have to be a conservative party, and we should be, but we have to apply those principles in the context of a changing country. The demographics of the country are changing, the technology is changing, the economy is changing, the culture is changing, and we have to learn to do a better job of applying our conservative principles to this new marketplace.
Here's some more hypocrisy from a guy who supported Bush's decision to borrow $700 billion from the Chinese to look for WMDs in Iraq.
And Governor Pawlenty, I want to put up something that you said the other day. You said, we've got a deficit with women. We have a deficit with Hispanics. We have a deficit with African Americans. We have a deficit with people of modest incomes. And I think the best thing we can do as a party is reach out to Sam's Club voters, folks who are just focused on bread and butter issues. So, Governor, are you saying stop railing against earmarks and stop focusing so much on social issues?
No, I'm not. The Republican Party is a conservative party. It will remain a conservative party. But the challenge and the opportunity is how do you apply those principles in the context of our time with those groups and others? That doesn't mean changing your principles or becoming more like Democrats. It's trying to be more effective at convincing Democrats to become Republicans.
So give us some specifics. What are you saying? How do you Sam's Club Republicans is your contrast, and you coined the phrase as compared to country club Republicans. Yep. So how do you appeal to them with conservative ideas?
Let me give you some examples. There's pressure on government to do more and more in terms of providing people with help with health care, with housing, with transportation. And the reason people can't afford to pay for that themselves in most instances is they lack a skill or an education to meaningfully connect to the economy of today. So the Republican Party should be about education reform, education accountability. We should have been out leading the charge on performance pay for teachers. We should be out leading the charge on making higher ed more affordable, more modern, more accessible, and higher quality by driving online learning opportunities across the country. We should have been on the front of renewable energy, not by showing how to subsidize it, by how to bring conservative principles to renewable energy. We should have been out in front on hitting the drums really hard on health care reform, not by having the government take it over, but by empowering patients and doctors, and on down the list. We did not see those emerging issues soon enough, and we were not aggressive and reform-minded enough to be out in front of it. And lastly, Chris, we cannot be the party that has the ones that continues to enable this culture of debt. We have to have a party that says, let's have a balanced budget. We should get back to having a federal constitutional requirement, or at least a statutory requirement, that the federal budget be balanced. That's first and foremost for our party. And people in Sam's Club understand that. They have to live on a budget, and they expect their government to as well.
And of course, there's nothing better than hearing two crooked Republicans act like they actually care about alternative energy sources.
Well, let's talk. One of the issues you talked about was energy and the environment. Let's talk about that, because there's a split in the party, and frankly, there seems to be, maybe I'm wrong, a split on this desk. Mr. Steele, at the Republican convention, you came up with the phrase "drill, baby, drill," which became a slogan for the McCain campaign and, in a sense, for the Republican Party. Governor Pawlenty, you say "drill, baby, drill" is not an energy policy.
And "drill, baby, drill" is not meant to be an energy policy. "Drill, baby, drill" is a way to get your attention focused on the question of how we do energy in this country. The last few energy bills have basically been a joke. How can you propose an energy bill and not have all the relevant players at the table? How do you not have a conversation with coal and solar and nuclear players at the table? It's not just about oil. But
drill, baby, drill sounds like let's have more domestic oil production.
Yeah, of course, because it's right here, right now. But it doesn't preclude you from doing other things. It is an all on the table, everything included idea. But it was to get you focused on the fact that we have the opportunity right here in front of us to begin to address some of the energy needs that we have and concerns that we have. Look at what happened to the price of per barrel when the president just lifted his executive order on his end. I mean, that began this tumbling that we saw. It was down like $14 in the first week. So there is a psychology to it, as well as a momentum to energy policy. And what I was trying to do is draw people's attention to the fact that this is one of many things we should begin to do as a party and as a nation.
Governor Pawlenty, whether Mr. Steele meant it or not, as somebody covering the campaign, clearly the implications seem to be that's the answer.
Well, what I've said in my speeches, and I think you're referring to this, Chris, is drill, baby, drill by itself is not a complete or comprehensive energy policy. So Michael and I agree on that point. My point is this. Clearly, the Republican Party was slow to the draw, was lagging behind on what is a better renewable energy future. And there are conservative ways to advance those goals and that cause, and we didn't do it fast enough.
What about this lame duck session? And we just heard from Senator Kyle. Congressional Republicans are going to be against a bailout for the auto industry. They're going to be against a big economic stimulus. I mean, is that appeal to Sam's Club Republicans, Governor, who are sitting there and very worried about staying afloat right now?
I think it does for this reason. If you go to Sam's Club or Target or Costco or Kmart, people are having to go there because they don't have more money to spend. You know, they're living on a budget. And they look at the federal government. The federal government is broke. When they talk about stimulating or bailouts, you know who's largely doing that? Our children and our grandchildren through the debt we're dumping on them, or in some cases the Chinese. There is no more money. And so people understand if they have to live on a budget when they go to Sam's Club and are looking for better value, they expect those same principles from their government. Live on a budget, and by the way, get good value for the money they are paying, and that's not what's happening in Washington, D.C.
Sometimes, and I'll bring you in a moment, Mr. Steele, isn't it sometimes good economics, particularly in a recession, to have some deficit spending? Not all the time, but in a serious recession, to stimulate the economy, to give people jobs, even if they're in these infrastructure programs, to have a middle-class tax cut, to put money in people's pockets so they can spend it?
Not if you're enabling a reckless and broken model, for example, with the auto industry. General Motors, as an example, has run their costs up along with their labor. You got big government, big business, and big labor concocting a deal that reflects an economic model that is broken, that is 20 years out of date, and it has to be restructured. They're not going to go away if they go into Chapter 11. They'll be restructured in a more modern, cost-efficient way. Sam's Club voters are looking at that and saying, why General Motors? How about my hardware Hank in Eagan, Minnesota? Are they going to get bailed out? How about the person who's working down at the grocery store? Are they going to get bailed out? So it's a matter of principle. And who's next? The steel industry that's turned down, the iron taconite mines in Minnesota, are they going to get bailed out? So it's a slippery slope, and but more importantly, it violates a core principle. The federal government is broke. They should be. Who's going to bail them out? The Chinese? There is no more money. We have to live within our means.